If you've ever walked through a mall food court, you know that smell. That wave of melted cheese, tomato sauce, and garlic that hits before you even see the sign. Sbarro has built its entire legacy on that scent, the illusion of fresh pizza made right in front of you. For years, it's been the comfort food of shoppers, travelers, and anyone needing a quick bite that feels familiar. But what if that trust has been quietly misplaced? In today's video, we're exposing 10 secrets Sbarro employees are never supposed to share, the kind that reveal how much can hide behind a smiling food court counter. By the end, you'll see why that slice under the heat lamp might not be the only thing getting reheated at Sbarro. Number 1, supervisors exploiting undocumented workers. Walk into any Sbarro, and you'll see smiling workers behind the counter tossing dough and slicing pizza. But some employees say that smile hides something darker. In one shocking lawsuit, a former worker claimed her supervisor used her undocumented status against her, coercing her into sexual acts by threatening her hours, pay, and job. She later appealed the case and lost, but the story revealed what insiders had whispered for years, that some workers live in fear of the very people meant to manage them. Across the fast food industry, immigrant workers often form the backbone of labor. At Sbarro, former staff say many are overworked, underpaid, and terrified to speak up. They take double shifts, clean ovens, and close late at night, knowing that one complaint could cost them everything. It's a power imbalance baked into the system, one that thrives on fear and silence. Sbarro's corporate office denied wrongdoing, but the lawsuit exposed how easily abuse can hide behind a counter. There are no warning signs, no public apologies, only turnover and new faces filling the same roles. It's a side of the food court most customers will never see, and most workers can never afford to talk about. And if you think that's bad, wait until you hear what happens when employees start asking about their paychecks. Number 2, what happens before payday? For most workers, payday is simple. You put in your hours, you get your check, and that's that. But for many Sbarro employees, what happens before payday can be a different story. Over the years, the company has faced multiple lawsuits over unpaid overtime, missing tips, and wages that mysteriously fell short of what workers expected. In one case, a judge refused to dismiss claims that executives were personally liable for wage and tip violations. That alone tells you how deep the problem runs. Employees have reported hours disappearing from schedules, overtime logged but never approved, and tips pooled in ways that never quite make sense. Some say it isn't outright theft, but a system designed to make short pay feel normal. A few dollars missing here, 10 minutes shaved there. Small losses that add up across hundreds of workers. Inside fast-paced food court chains, it's easy to hide those gaps. Pay cycles are tight, managers rotate, and many workers don't have time or language skills to dispute a short check. The culture becomes one of quiet acceptance. People keep working, hoping next week's pay will even it out. To customers, Sbarro's employees look like a well-oiled team behind the counter. But to those who've worked there, payday isn't always a reward. It's a reminder of how easy it is for hard work to vanish before the deposit clears. But the real cost of cutting corners doesn't show up on a pay stub. It shows up in the kitchen. Number 3, they only clean for inspections. To the average customer, a Sbarro kitchen looks spotless. Counters are wiped, trays are polished, and ovens glow behind the glass. But according to multiple employee reviews and internal accounts, that cleanliness doesn't always extend past what customers can see. Workers describe cramped prep areas stacked with leftover ingredients, ovens that rarely get deep cleaned, and floors that stay greasy long after closing time. The pace of food court service leaves little room for thorough cleaning. Employees are expected to serve nonstop through lunch rushes, then flip directly into evening prep. The few minutes between shifts often become a blur of wiping surfaces and hiding clutter before management walks through. Some say the goal isn't true sanitation, it's appearance. If it looks clean from the counter, that's usually enough. Former staff have mentioned that grease traps go untouched for weeks, vents clog with dust, and storage shelves collect spills that no one has time to scrub. In some locations, food is reheated the next day rather than tossed, because throwing away product means paperwork and blame. The system rewards speed and savings, not hygiene. Most customers never notice because everything happens out of view. The pizza looks hot, the counter shines, and the smell covers everything else. But once you've worked a few closing shifts, you start realizing cleanliness is part of the show. And if you think the cleaning shortcuts are bad, wait until you find out who really decides what goes into the food itself. Number 4, they only follow recipes. When corporate checks, in every Sbarro slice is supposed to taste the same, whether you buy it in New York, Texas, or inside an airport food court in Ohio. The dough, the sauce, even the cheese blend are standardized through strict corporate recipes. But according to multiple employees, that consistency only exists when someone from corporate is around. Once the visit ends, shortcuts return almost immediately. Some workers admit that if ingredients run low, they improvise. A cheaper mozzarella blend replaces the standard cheese, or frozen dough takes the place of freshly proofed batches. It's not rebellion, it's survival. Franchisees operate under tight budgets and rigid supplier contracts. When costs rise and margins shrink, corners get cut quietly. Corporate might send warnings, but managers know inspections are rare, and food court customers are too busy to notice subtle differences in taste. Employees say the written recipes often hang on walls or binders, gathering dust. The actual methods vary from store to store, depending on who's running the kitchen that day. Some staff even refer to the real recipe as whatever keeps the ovens running and the sales steady. For a brand built on uniformity, the truth is that Sbarro's flavor depends more on circumstance than quality control. And while employees bent the rules to stay afloat, the company was doing the same thing on a much larger scale. Number 5, they only survived. Because of who backed them for years, Sbarro looked untouchable. The bright red logo, the smell of melted cheese, and those glowing counters made it seem like a permanent part of every mall in America. But behind that familiar presence was a company on the verge of collapse. Twice in just 3 years, Sbarro filed for bankruptcy. Locations shut down overnight, debts piled up, and thousands of employees were left without notice. To customers, it looked like a slow decline. To insiders, it felt like free fall. What kept Sbarro alive wasn't pizza or profits. It was backing. Private equity investors stepped in to buy the chain, restructure it, and rebrand it as something new. Those investors weren't chefs or food lovers, they were financiers. Their job wasn't to make better pizza, it was to make the numbers look good enough to sell again. Stores were closed, leases were renegotiated, and suppliers were swapped out for cheaper ones. Employees described that era as confusing and unstable. One week they were told to expect raises, the next, their hours were cut. Franchise owners who had poured their savings into the brand suddenly found their contracts rewritten or their stores sold. The focus had shifted from food to survival, and survival, in this case, meant finding whoever was willing to bankroll the illusion of success. When money becomes the mission, quality takes a backseat. And inside Sbarro, that mindset didn't just shape the balance sheets, it began changing the way staff were told to report what really happens on the job. Number 7, they only call it fresh. Because they have to. Every sign, every menu, every ad repeats the same promise. Fresh pizza made daily. It's the phrase that makes customers feel safe. The illusion that what they're eating came out of the oven minutes ago. But according to workers who've spent time behind the counter, fresh is one of the most flexible words in Sbarro's kitchen. Employees say the dough isn't always made from scratch each morning. Some stores receive pre-mixed or frozen batches that are thawed overnight, brushed with oil, and passed off as freshly made. The same goes for sauces and toppings, many of which are delivered in bulk containers that last for weeks. When food costs rise, managers stretch ingredients to cover more orders. Old vegetables get sliced thinner, cheese gets rationed, and sauce gets watered down to make it last. Staff explain that the freshness promise is more about branding than reality. If a pizza sits too long under the heat lamp, it's not tossed. It's re-sauced, re-cheesed, and reheated for the next rush. Slices are swapped between trays, sometimes more than once. And because the ovens stay hot and the lights stay bright, most customers never notice the difference. The word fresh doesn't always mean new. At Sbarro, it often means good enough to sell again. And when ingredients are stretched that far, it's not just flavor that suffers. There's something else being compromised, something much riskier than taste. Number 8, they only follow safety rules. When it's convenient, every Sbarro location has a checklist taped to the wall. Temperature logs, glove policies, sanitation steps, all designed to make sure food safety is never in question. But former employees say those lists are often treated as decoration. The rules exist to impress inspectors, not to guide the day-to-day reality of a crowded, understaffed kitchen. Workers describe long stretches where gloves aren't replaced, hand-washing stations go unused, and temperature checks are skipped entirely during rush hours. Some say they were told to eyeball it instead of measuring. If a pizza looked hot enough, that was good enough. It's not neglect out of laziness, it's neglect born of pressure. There's never enough staff to meet the rules and the rush at the same time. When something does go wrong, it's handled quietly. If a topping falls onto a dirty surface, it's picked up and reused. If sauce spills onto the floor, it's scooped back into the pan. Managers want speed, not waste. The longer a team spends following protocol, the longer the line gets. And that's what corporate notices most. For many workers, the safety checklist becomes more of a suggestion than a rulebook. It's there to protect the company, not the customer. As long as the pizza looks right and the numbers stay clean, everyone keeps moving. But for a company this secretive, what happens when those rules collide with a darker history few employees are allowed to talk about? Number 9, they only stay quiet. Because they're told to. Sbarro, like most large chains, has policies for workplace conduct and whistleblowing. In theory, employees can report issues, unpaid hours, unsafe conditions, or management misconduct without fear. But several former staff members say that, in reality, speaking up can cost you your job. Workers describe a culture where silence is safer than honesty. Complaints about hygiene or pay discrepancies are often dismissed as attitude problems. Those who persist find their hours cut or their shifts suddenly rearranged. Managers don't need to threaten directly. The message spreads through example. When one employee gets transferred or written up after speaking out, everyone else learns to stay quiet. In some franchises, workers sign strict non-disclosure clauses that limit what they can say publicly, even after leaving the job. Others mention group chats and texts where supervisors remind staff not to talk business online. Some employees recall being told that reporting to corporate makes everyone look bad, so problems are handled internally or buried. For most, the paycheck isn't worth the risk of confrontation. They stay silent, do their shifts, and hope to avoid notice. It's how the system maintains itself. Not through threats, but through quiet fear. But the silence has consequences. When employees can't speak freely, the same mistakes repeat and the same corners keep getting cut. And sometimes, that silence hides more than workplace issues. Number 10, they only learned their lesson. After the headlines. For years, Sbarro's internal problems stayed behind food court walls until they didn't. In 2011 and again in 2014, bankruptcy filings exposed the truth. High debts, low oversight, and a culture that had been cutting corners for too long. Court documents, lawsuits, and employee testimonies painted a pattern that stretched far beyond pizza. It wasn't one bad manager or one unlucky year. It was a system that finally caught up with itself. The company promised change after those headlines. New investors, new marketing, new leadership. They pledged to modernize the brand, retrain staff, and rebuild trust. And for a while, it seemed to work. Stores reopened, promotions returned, and customers once again saw that bright red logo in the mall. But inside, many employees say little really changed. The same practices, rushing, underpaying, ignoring, simply adapted to a new generation of workers. One former manager put it best, "We were told to smile harder, not fix anything." That attitude summed up the company's recovery effort, more image than reform. Every time Sbarro seems ready for a comeback, the same patterns start showing through. Cheap labor, corporate pressure, and shortcuts that always circle back to the same place. Every company hides something, but at Sbarro, those secrets became routine. Missing pay, old ingredients, fake numbers, and silence from the people who knew better. None of it happened by accident. It's how the system works. The brand still looks the same from the outside, the same logo, the same slices, the same smile behind the counter. But once you know what happens inside, that image doesn't look as clean. Sbarro didn't fall apart because of bad pizza. It fell apart because the truth kept getting buried. If this opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks fast food is simple.